The Cincinnati Bearcats can't go wrong with who they choose to start a quarterback this upcoming season. Or can they? That's on today's episode of Locked On Bearcats.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast. Alex Frank here with you, your host each and every day, bringing all of my experiences from my days as sports director of Bearcast Media, UC student-run media organization, was a play-by-play announcer and color analyst for Bearcats football and men's basketball games, and hosted a weekly radio show in the Jack and Jones Strader Studio, Sports Any Way You Want It. Was also a co-host of that show with my good friend Zach Freeze, bringing all of those experiences here to the Locked On Bearcats podcast. Don't forget, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, which at last check, we are at 108 subscribers, but that's far from where we want to be, so hit that subscribe button. And don't forget, you can also like and share a comment on today's video. If you are downloading from an audio platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast, don't forget you can subscribe there too. And you can also share a comment and or give it a rating. All of that helps more Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. And you heard on this podcast yesterday, Russ Heltman from All Bearcats and Sports Illustrated say that there is a wrong decision that can be made in who the Bearcats name as the starting quarterback. There absolutely is. This is a decision that I have said you can't go wrong on. Well, you can. Because as spring ball unfolded and the aftermath of the spring game and how both quarterbacks, Ben Bryant and Evan Prater, performed, there is a wrong decision that can be made. Let's say you throw Ben Bryant out there and he struggles against Arkansas. If you throw Ben Bryant out there, if you are starting Ben Bryant in Fayetteville week 1 and he struggles, that is a bad position to be in. Because then you know his ceiling. And Evan Prater won't even start a marquee game until what? SMU, UCF, a conference championship? Look, there's every reason to start Ben Bryant. He has more experience. He's familiar with the Bearcats program. So is Evan Prater. Evan Prater has been here for 2 years. And he backed up the greatest quarterback in Bearcats football history in Desmond Ridder. How is that not valuable? How is that not more valuable than a full season's worth of starting games in the Mid-American Conference? Seriously. Apologize for whatever just dropped. How is it not more valuable to back up Desmond Ridder on a run to the college football playoff, 2 straight conference championships, during a COVID season? How is that not more valuable than a full season's worth of just playing in the Mid-American Conference and not even putting up good numbers? Let's say Evan Prater goes out there, he's the starter against Arkansas, and he struggles. I can live with that. If Evan Prater goes out there and completes less than 50% of his passes, maybe throws an interception or two, maybe throws for less than 200 yards, and the Bearcats lose by, let's say, 34-17, okay, fine. I can live with that. But that's his first start. There's one way to look at this. And I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine Wednesday. There is one way to look at this that I haven't thought about. Look at it as Ben Bryant is your backup. You can do way worse than that. You can do way worse than having Ben Bryant as your backup. Because if you look at it that way, and Evan Prater is going out there in week 1 against Arkansas and he struggles, and it's 21-0 by midway through the second quarter, the game's not over yet. You can throw in Ben Bryant, who, his first start with Cincinnati brought them back from down 17-3 in Memphis. And Arkansas is not an SEC powerhouse. I mean, yes, they had a really good season last year. And yes, they are an SEC program that can recruit good players. But they're not Alabama. They're not Georgia. They're not Florida. They're not LSU. Hell, they may not even be Tennessee. Or at this point, they're not even Kentucky or Ole Miss. This is not an SEC juggernaut. that you're facing. So 21-0 is not an insurmountable deficit. If it gets to that point, you can throw in Ben Bryant, who has brought the Bearcats back from a deficit of close to that caliber before. That is valuable to have. If you look at it the other way, though, if Ben Bryant goes out there and it's 21-0, you're screwed. You're caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, because then your backup's Evan Prater. And what are you going to do? Throw your redshirt sophomore out there to bring you back from down 21-0? That's not going to go well. Evan Prater can be a stone cold. He can be, nothing intimidates him, whatever. But 21-0 in your first game on the road at an SEC school, that's not what you would call an ideal situation to start your college career. Now, I'm sure there's instances where quarterbacks have been thrown into that situation and they thrive. Look at Lamar Jackson. It wasn't a game, but it was a score, at a turning point of the Ravens season. Hell, it was a turning point of the franchise. Remember John Harbaugh was on the hot seat? John Harbaugh was going to be fired after that season, potentially. The Ravens were 4-5 on the outside looking in at the playoffs. And what does Lamar Jackson do? Comes in, starts the final 7 games of the season. Wasn't, flashy. He was flashy. It wasn't overly prolific in terms of stats. But damn it, the Ravens went 6-1 in those 7 games. And by the way, the only game they lost was a 3-point overtime loss at Kansas City. And they lost that game because Patrick Mahomes made a miracle 4th and 9 throw down 7 late in the game. Brett Favre, the quarterback that Joe Burrow reminds me of. His first game or one of his very first games with the Packers, I believe it was his first win. I'm sorry, the first game he appeared in as a Packer. 1992. 92? Yeah, 1992. Comes in against the Bengals. Packers are down big. I believe it was like 20-3 or 23-3. Leads the Packers all the way back to a 24-23 win. Never looked back. Hall of Fame career from there. First game he played against the Bengals led the Packers to a come-from-behind win. I believe it was 23-3. And he brought him all the way back to a 24-3 win. Evan Prater can do that. But that's a very tough spot to be in. If you bring your experienced guy off the bench in that situation, fine. But you bring your inexperienced guy off the bench in that situation, sorry, can't live with that. That's not going to go well. And then you have a quarterback conundrum in the middle of the season, which thankfully the Bearcats have not had for the last 4 years. You don't want to go there. Believe me. Georgia did it. But that's because they also were Georgia and they had an uberly good team outside of the quarterback. But you see teams who struggle to figure out who their quarterback is, it eventually catches up to you if you don't figure it out soon enough. Don't put yourself in that position. The first game of the season is so important, not only for the possibility of maybe going back to the college football playoff, but it's also important for the starting quarterback job. I'll continue to explain why next, after a word from Bill Parr. You see, I want to tell you something. I love brownies. That's a true fact. That might be my sweet tooth, if it's not churros or German chocolate cake. But you know what I love more? Brownie batter. That's true. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making the brownies. I actually eat half the bag of chocolate chips when I make the brownies. So imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula clean and get some more protein in. What? Well, you're in luck because Bill has a new creation and this one is better than ever. The Brownie Batter Puff. You heard me right. This puff takes protein bars to a whole new level and they're available right now at Built.com. All Built Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. So when you eat a Built Puff, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And the Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you are eating a protein bar. No need to pinch yourself. This is real life. It's not too good to be true, like sometimes when you go to a car dealership. Go to build.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your Brownie Batter Puffs order now. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Make sure to go check out Locked On NBA Big Board as host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stayman, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available everywhere you get your podcasts. Alex Frank here with you on this Friday, May the 20th of 2022. So we are 3 months and 14 days from the Bearcats season opener. So that is, let me see if my Cincinnati math can bail me out here. So we are 11, 30, 41, 72, 103, 106 days away from the first Bearcats game of the season. 106 days. So that's about 15 weeks away. So they have 15 weeks to figure out who their starting quarterback is. There's a lot of outcomes that can come from the first game. And it doesn't just impact this upcoming season. It impacts going forward. Because as Russ said yesterday on this show, yes, the Bearcats are looking, of course, to, the first game of the season and then the next game after that. They're not focused on 2023. That program doesn't do that. However, I am. And let me tell you why. Because I want the Bearcats, when they go into the Big 12, to not have to have a question mark surrounding the quarterback position. You cannot have that and expect to compete in that league, let alone college football overall. The one thing about being a Bengals fan, and this is, Cincinnati sports, you can make so many connections with the Bearcats to the Bengals. Hell, both the Bearcats and Bengals went to the championship game or playoff of their sport. Bearcats college football playoff, Bengals NFL. The one thing about the Bengals last year, Mo Egger talked about this constantly. I began to feel that way, especially after the Tennessee game in the playoffs. It did not matter what team was on the other sideline. It did not matter who the other quarterback was. The Bengals had Joe Burrow. And with Joe Burrow, you believe you can win any game on the schedule. You believe you can win the AFC Championship in Kansas City down 18. You believe you can win the Super Bowl against the vaunted Rams defense that had 2 Hall of Fame defensive ends on that team. You believe the Bengals could win at every game. You felt the Bearcats could win every game with Desmond Ridder. Why not continue to do that with the quarterback? By the way, fun fact, Ben Bryant is 0-1 as a Bearcat starter. So while Ben Bryant might have been competitive and might have been really good in some spots against Memphis, the Bearcats still lost the game by 10. They were behind by 14 points by the time the first quarter was over. So what does that tell you? If you throw Ben Bryant out in Fayetteville and he doesn't perform well, now you're in a tough spot because you're 0-1. What has Ben Bryant shown you that, yes, he might be Kennesaw State. He might be Miami. He might be Indiana. They might win every other game on the schedule, but damn it, if they can't beat Arkansas because they threw Ben Bryant out there and they left the quarterback on the bench, who I have said many times is going to give the Bearcats the opportunity to be really good this year, what does that tell you? Now you're in a tough spot. Because Ben Bryant's ceiling. Remember how with Andy Dalton, when he was here with the Bengals, you knew there was a ceiling. Yes, he won big games on occasion, never in the playoffs. The Bengals last year went 6-3 against teams with winning records, including 3 in the playoffs, 2 on the road, and oh, by the way, they won 7 games by 1 score. So that tells you that Joe Burrow can win when the game is on the line. I believe Evan Prater can do that too. And if you do throw Ben Bryant out there and you have his ceiling, you haven't even gotten Evan Prater any experience. So what's going to happen if Ben Bryant goes out there against Arkansas and is 13 of 30 for 120 and 3 interceptions? Oh, if you think I'm riled up now, you haven't seen anything yet. Okay, you haven't heard anything yet. If you're listening or watching this, just you wait. I hope that doesn't happen though. So if you throw Ben Bryant out there, you know his ceiling. And when you go to the Big 12, you know his ceiling, and you don't even have Evan Prater, and you are going to throw him out there once you get to the Big 12, but he has no experience. If Ben Bryant performs well, yeah, I'd feel good about that. And then it's like, okay, we're good for now, and we've got this other quarterback waiting in the wings. But on that same line, you don't want to have him waiting in the wings too long. You'd feel good about Ben Bryant performing well, win or lose. But then you just are going to, be more inclined to keep him in the starting quarterback role. And you don't even know what you're going to have in Evan Prater. The reason why this game is so important in terms of long-term, outlook is you're going to the Big 12. Ben Bryant only has 2 more years of eligibility. And say he starts the next 2 years. Evan Prater is only going to get 1 year of experience. And let me tell you this. Evan Prater is a 4-star recruit. I haven't met him. I haven't talked to him. But I would think, and if I was in his shoes, and Ben Bryant continues to start, and I'm a 4-star recruit, I'm transferring. I'm transferring somewhere. And then the Bearcats are going to be in a tough spot after 2 years. So really, you don't win if you start Ben Bryant. You might win, maybe a little something. But if you start Evan Prater, and he performs well against Arkansas, win or lose, boom, you're set for the next 3 years. The next 3 years. Repeat that to yourself however many times you need to. If you start Evan Prater and he performs well in Arkansas, you are set for the next 3 years at quarterback. Now, he could go pro after 2. That's fine. But you could be set now. Okay, so put it that way. You'd be set for the next 2 years at least. Maybe 3 years. Let's say Prater doesn't perform well. All right, fine. You threw him to the wolves against Arkansas. The Bearcats made a mistake by starting Hayden Moore at UCLA in 2018. It may have been a good decision at the time because he had more experience than Desmond Ridder. And Desmond Ridder was not highly touted as a recruit as Evan Prater was. That's fine. 2 possessions in, though, which one of those, fun fact, ended with a fumble at UCLA. You're down 10-0. Now, thankfully, UCLA is not good at football, so you had the ability to come back, which the Bearcats did. You had the potential, the ability to do that with Desmond Ridder. You may not have that ability here. So I know that the decision on the surface might be, well, we're going to Arkansas. I want the most experienced guy. It's not like you're going to Alabama or Florida or Georgia or LSU or another SEC juggernaut. You're going to Arkansas. Arkansas is not a world beater. You can start Evan Prater, throw him to the wolves in his first game. Evan Prater is a former state champion quarterback from Cincinnati. And I don't even care if Wyoming's a Division IV school or Division II, whatever level they are. I believe they're Division IV. No, actually, they're Division II, my bad. I don't care what level they are. The fact is, Evan Prater is a state champion quarterback from the state of Ohio, from Cincinnati. That has to mean something to you. Ben Bryant is from Chicago. That's great. But Evan Prater is from one of the hottest beds of high school football in the country. And he backed up Desmond Ridder, who took the Bearcats to the college football playoff. Evan Prater has learned way more than Ben Bryant has ever learned in his college career. And he's only been here for he's only been in college for half as many years. Think about that for a minute. Let that sink in, because that is the reality. And if Evan Prater doesn't perform well, okay, fine. You can learn and evolve. If he goes out there and, like I said, is 13 of 30 for 150, maybe a touchdown, but 2 picks, fine. And then you have Ben Bryant if need be. You know you're comfortable with your backup if Prater continues to struggle. You won't get caught in a hard rock, in between a rock and a hard place if you start Evan Prater. It's a no-lose situation. Sometimes what you should do at the surface, there can be a losing, result or potential losing outcome. Maybe the decision is, okay, we can't lose if we start Evan Prater. That has to be a factor into this decision as to who starts at quarterback. And if I'm telling you that if Evan Prater performs well, win or lose, you're set for the next 2 years at least, maybe 3. And if he doesn't, and even if he doesn't perform well, and that's okay, because he can learn and evolve, and he has Gino Guidugli as his offensive coordinator and his quarterback's coach, and if need be, you have Ben Bryant waiting in the wings. I would much rather have that than throw Ben Bryant out there, because if he does perform well, yeah, great, but then it's going to be hard to pull him, and he only has 2 more years of eligibility. He's probably going to play both years, and then what happens to Evan Prater? You lose him, and you lose out on the highest-rated recruit in Bearcats history. And if he doesn't perform well, then it's like, well, we know his ceiling, and we haven't even gotten Evan Prater any experience, and we're just going to be another team in the American Athletic Conference, let alone college football. Evan Prater should be the starting quarterback for these reasons. And I'm going to keep pounding my fist. Ow, that hurt. That's okay. I'm going to keep pounding this fist all off season. Maybe you should give me a gavel right now, and I can be the judge in this quarterback battle. Case closed. Evan Prater should be the starting quarterback for the 2022 season. Up next, a decision that the NCAA made yesterday, or rather Wednesday, that has me praising them for once. I'll explain next, but first I got to tell you about BetOnline. It is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Rolling right along into a long-awaited decision that does impact Cincinnati. Maybe not this year, but it will next year in the Big 12. Alex Frank here with you on Locked On Bearcats, your host each and every day. So the NCAA came down Wednesday. The Division I Division I Council has voted to eliminate requirements for FBS conference title games. In an article written by Paolo Uggetti and Andrea Adelson of ESPN on Wednesday, they explained that the NCAA Division I Council announced Wednesday that it will relax restrictions on college football's conference championship games, allowing conferences to determine the teams that would participate in their respective title game. The decision paves the way for conferences to avoid having title game matchups determined by division winners, as well as possibly eliminating divisions altogether. Praise the almighty college football gods on this, because I'm sick and tired of seeing these weak-ass teams year in, year out, get the chance to play for a conference championship. Let me give you some examples. I remember in 2012, Wisconsin was 7-5. 7-5. And they played for a conference championship and still went to the Rose Bowl. I remember in 2018, the ACC championship matchup was Clemson and Pitt. Yeah, Pitt had 4 losses. I mean, there's been ACC teams that have gone to the conference championship game with 7-5 records or 6-6. I think Virginia Tech might have been one of them. No, they weren't one of them in 2016. I know Georgia Tech was one in 2012. I know that might have been, was it 2013? I just know that there have been teams throughout college football that have played in conference championship games with weak-ass records. And this has got to stop. I mean, this is conference championship week. Okay? I mean, the Big 12 did a great thing a few years ago, and this is why I like UC going there. The Big 12 did a great thing by eliminating divisions. Look at the conference championship matchups in full seasons that you've had since eliminating divisions. This past year was Baylor and Oklahoma State. 9 versus 5 in the country. Both teams, or rather, Oklahoma State was 11-1, Baylor was 10-2, and it turned out to be a fantastic game. 2019, it was number 7 Baylor versus number 6 Oklahoma. Both teams were 11-1. Or Baylor might have been 10-2. But both teams, I think both teams were 11-1. Both teams were really good teams. Those two teams played a classic in the regular season in Waco, and they produced an overtime thriller in the Big 12 championship that year. Go back to 2018, it was Texas versus Oklahoma again. Both teams were really good. Oklahoma was 11-1. Texas was 10-2. Both teams were ranked in the top 25, and it was another fantastic game. 2017, it was TCU and Oklahoma. TCU, I believe, was good in 2017, but the point is this. No longer are you going to get a really good team from one division in a conference championship game versus some scrub from another division. How many times when Clemson won 6 straight ACC championships did they play a terrible team in the championship game? I think the best opponent they ever played in a conference championship game was Notre Dame in 2020, and that's an exception because they were in the ACC that year. Or 2017 when they played Miami, Florida, and let's be honest, that game was over before it even started. We got to stop with these conference championship games, being so just like a regular season game. It should be the best 2 teams from each conference. And it's going to be undisputed that way because the regular season determines who plays in the conference championship. Here's a great quote from George Kliavkoff, the commissioner of the Pac-12. He said, in quote, "Our goal is to place our 2 best teams in our Pac-12 football championship game, which we believe will provide our conference with the best opportunity to optimize CFP invitations and ultimately win national championships. Today's decision is an important step towards that goal and immediately increases both fan interest in and the media value of our football championship game." Boom. Because who gives a hoot right now about the Pac-12 championship? No one in Cincinnati does, I guarantee you. Has the Pac-12 championship game had an impact on you in Cincinnati? If so, you can DM me on Twitter at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's. You can message me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, or you can email me at alex3frank@gmail.com, all lowercase alex, the number 3frank@gmail.com. You can send me your thoughts. If the Pac-12 championship game affects you, then good for you, because it sure as hell doesn't affect me right now. But it can if the best 2 teams in the conference are playing in it. If that means it's Oregon and Utah again next year, then I'm fine with that. If that means the ACC is going to start eliminating divisions in 2023, praise the almighty gods there. If that happens and Clemson plays finally a decent opponent, they can play Florida State again. They can play North Carolina. They can play Virginia Tech, whomever. They can at least play somebody decent in the ACC championship. Maybe that means it's Louisville or Miami, whomever it is. If the Big Ten, if Ohio State and Michigan play in back-to-back weeks, sign me the hell up for that. If we go to the SEC and that means Alabama and LSU are playing in the conference championship game, sign me up for that. I might have to have Caroline Fenton on this show again because that was her topic on her show yesterday. I'm going to have to talk to her about that. Anyway, this is finally a decision that the NCAA has made that is great. Unlike you can't use more than 30 milliliters or milliliters of toothpaste on your damn toothbrusher. Well, if you take too many noodles, if your prongs hold too many noodles, you can't play this week. I mean, what the hell are we doing there? So thank you, Division I Council, for actually having the competitive interest and the interests of the fans and the conferences at heart. Let the conferences govern themselves. If they want divisions, fine. If they don't, then that's fine too, and that's probably the best way to go about it. And when Cincinnati joins the Big 12, if that means it's Cincinnati and Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game in Dallas, Texas, sign me up for that. If it's Cincinnati versus Texas, sign me up for that. If it's Cincinnati versus, Baylor, that'd be good. There won't be divisions. And then the schedules will be different every year. You won't have your same opponents. That's going to be fun. Thank you, Division I Council, for once. Thank you, NCAA, for once. That's going to do it for me today here on Locked On Bearcats. Don't forget to subscribe to the Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel. You can like and share a comment on today's video as well. Don't forget, if you're downloading from an audio platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, don't forget to subscribe there too. You can also share a comment and or give it a rating All of that helps more Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. Now get all of your daily Big 12 news in less than 30 minutes with Big 12 expert Josh Neighbors, free and available everywhere you get your podcast. We may not be done with this talking point on the decision to let the conferences determine their championship games. We're sure as hell not done with the quarterback battle between Evan Prater and Ben Bryant. Notice how I said Evan Prater's name first. Have a great weekend. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day, and I will be back on Monday.